Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use the promo code DNVR25. You'll get 25% off your first purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I'm your host, Drew Creasman, managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me, as always, is beat writer Patrick Lyons. And on this episode, we get you all caught up on baseball. You know, let's take a deep breath, take a look at what has come before, what is to come next. We'll take a look at the Colorado Rockies first half, some of the big surprises, maybe some of the disappointments, some of the standout things, and then we'll look ahead, what we think it's going to look like for the rest of the season. We'll do a little bit of the same with Major League Baseball wide, Patrick. But first of all, just how are you, man? What a week, huh? Just a big deep breath. There's going to be more baseball again. They're going to get back out and start playing, but it not technically being the halfway point, it sure does feel like a great time to kind of reset and take another look at the baseball landscape.
There's now, for maybe only the second time ever in Colorado history, a different type of Coors Field hangover. Because,
Totally.
Still not sleeping, still kind of excited, still going through everything, wondering, did any American League players possibly transmit any viruses to us?
Yeah.
There's a little of that element, but it's exciting. Yeah, it's a good reset point. Even having, partaken in the All-Star break, which, so many people don't and so many players obviously don't. Like they enjoy that break, and you don't blame them. They did get to reset. So even though our break may have just been Thursday, that's okay. Let's go. It's baseball. It's what we love. So bring it on.
Let's do the baseball. Let's do it, Patrick. All right, let's get into these Colorado Rockies, who had, as everyone listening to this knows, a remarkably entertaining, but altogether pretty frustrating first half. Obviously, being very, very good at home, being historically or close to historically bad on the road, that remains to be seen. I haven't checked the updated pace since they won 3 of their last 4, what they're on pace for. But, the team doing what it is, I think we know what that is, right? I think we've pretty much got the team down. So really, let's get into some of these individual performances.
Yeah, there have been some surprises, some relative disappointments, but the Rockies have definitely had a lot of highlights they've provided since the opening day victory, since Cody Bellinger passed Justin Turner on a home run and got a outside the park ground rule single. And a cat ran around and took the world over by storm. A lot has actually happened since then. Right. And we made some predictions at the beginning of the season. I think that have been pretty fair. This will be one of the better graphics that we're going to end up showing, where we're going to feel good about it, and then progressively worse.
Yeah, let's start with the good ones. Let's start with what we did well here.
Yeah, team wins 66 for me, 70 for you. They're right in that wheelhouse. Yeah. We'll see what happens, even with a trade of a Trevor Story. We'll see if they completely unload any and everybody that you expect them to, or players who are free agents after this year or free agents after next year. That could skew it in the wrong direction for both of us. I did just publish something on the DNVR.com about the trade deadline. Some of the guys you could see move, but we're right there in the wheelhouse. For all intents and purposes, the team that looked like a 100-loss team on the road doesn't appear to be a 100-loss team overall, and that's ultimately how you lose 100 games. You're not very good for 2/3 of the games in an entire season.
Yeah.
And the Rockies are great at home, so they really shouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, there's a lot, to that. I think you're right. I think the trade deadline is going to be the big determining factor between whether or not they can get to the 70 that I predicted, or they fall to your 66, or even shorter than that if they do the full teardown, which I don't think too many people expect them to. I do think they're going to sell. They're also, remember, as we talked about, and my biggest reason for picking them to win 70 games and taking them to finish 4th there in the NL West ahead of the Diamondbacks, which I had, was the quality of their starting pitching, right? That has more or less been borne out. And as you know, we think about what the Rockies are likely to lose at the trade deadline. There is also the one big thing that they're going to get back here in the second half, and that's Austin Gomber. And then they've got the rest of that starting pitching looking pretty good. So I think that's, again, it's what keeps your head afloat in baseball. That's how you steal games. That's how you end up winning a series in San Diego against the Padres that you probably shouldn't, because 3 pitchers go out and are really, really good, and the other guys go cold for a second, you get one. So if the starting pitching continues to be solid, I think they'll continue to not be total bottom dwellers, even if they sell hard at the deadline.
Yeah, right now with the big series win in San Diego, coupled with a win against the D-backs, going 3-3 on the road. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. Hey, that's not so bad, right? They are on pace for about 69 wins right now.
Oh, okay.
Let's be adults about this. All right. Where are they going to finish? And that's as just as much to do with the Rockies as it does the rest of the division. They're going to be in last place. There's a couple really good teams in the division. I like the veteran presence of the Giants. Not enough to pick them to win the division. Not enough to even make the postseason. Right. They were way better than what I had expected. But I thought, Arizona does have a better team than Colorado. And right now, and I don't have to say right now, I think it's pretty safe that the Rockies they're 14 and a half games ahead of the D-backs. There's no way that's happening. So I'm already going to give you that victory there, because you had them pegged for 4th place in the NL West.
Yeah, that was one, I think, where like my internet, I remember getting booted from that podcast for a second, and you and Makayla talking about how much better the Diamondbacks lineup was than the Rockies. I remember coming back in like way too hot, like just like, go, what do you got? Who there was one specific person, was it their shortstop? And I was like, stop it.
Nick Ahmed, he's more a defensive first, but
yeah.
It's okay.
And I was just like, stop. When Nick Ahmed's like the 3rd or 4th guy you've mentioned here, with like that lineup's not too bad. So I will on that one, but I'm also, the injuries have played a massive role in that. And if the Rockies were as injured as the Diamondbacks are, and vice versa, it would be flipped.
That's why you play the games. Why you play the games. All right. We each said there was going to be 2 All-Stars. And we probably could split that up and figure out how between Bud Black, Trevor Story, and the one All-Star they really had in Trevor Story is 2. You get a half a point for the Derby, obviously. Yeah. We all know that. And when you've got someone on the coaching staff, another half point.
Clearly.
Yeah. I don't. I think I probably just went Story and Mcmahon, if I remember exactly. Those would probably been the 2 guys I would have guessed would have made it. Because again, look, as much as we know Marquez, Gray, Senzatella, Freeland, how they're all, some of the best at what they do, and when on their game, their name's in the conversation as one of the top 10 starting pitchers. So hey, if things go their way, they can be an all-star, obviously, but the history of the franchise, there just typically hasn't been, right? You get a 3.75 ERA and have teams drooling over you, which essentially all of MLB is right now with Herman Marquez, and they don't even get a sniff. And so for Marquez to have gotten that acknowledgement is great, to know that you don't have to have, a low 3 or a sub 3 ERA and be acknowledged, by your peers or by MLB. That's pretty great.
Yeah, I've been big on taking a pitcher, but non-specifically the last couple of years to make I figured they were due for one, and these guys have been so good, and I had seen a little bit of the shifting in this nationally, the narrative, especially around Marquez. And so, but I don't know that I would have, I believe my prediction was Story and a pitcher.
You may have said Bard. This is just coming back to me.
Okay,
which was it? Sure. Yeah, that's a solid pick.
Right.
Again, with relievers. Look, it worked for Greg Holland. Yep. He was an all-star.
That can be
and was not a bad pick. I like. Yeah, I like where you're coming from.
Been their guy a couple of times. Ottavino wasn't, but should have been.
Sure.
So I had that kind of in mind there. So I think you're right. But close on that. I will say they were very, very close to having 2 all-stars. We talked about all their, almost the Ryan McMahon and Trevor Story and those guys being pretty close in there. And maybe even if John Gray or Austin Gomber don't get hurt when they do, or even Kyle Freeland. Look at what he's done since he's been healthy. He missed the first, month and a half, almost 2 months of the season. So there were a couple other guys who've played almost at that level but for not long enough. And so, but we'll take it.
They had plenty of guys that were on the cusp, at a certain point. It's funny when McMahon started to kind of go downhill, that's when the questions are like, well, actually now who's going to be their all-star? And then there were a few candidates. We'll see who catches fire. And Herman was the one who absolutely caught fire.
Yeah.
As far as the WAR leader for pitchers, I took Marquez. You took Senzatella. We'll see what happens in the second half. That one, Senzatella was really great last year, and I think he's going to have a better second half than first half. But this one could be this is another runaway here. We might have to just lock this one in as well.
You're killing me on that one for sure.
And same thing for hitters, the WAR leaders. We both took Ryan McMahon, and I think he might be third right now on the team. Do we know? I CJ Cronin's fifth, and maybe challenging to potentially surpass McMahon at some point. Story definitely stepped things up a lot in the final couple weeks leading into the Derby, and potentially an all-star nomination. Tapia is a little bit behind there at 1.2 wins above replacement according to Fangraphs. So McMahon's number 2 right now, and if Story does get traded, there you go. And I know that was part of the conversation and discussion when you think about what the team's going to do in the second half and the big picture. Look, if you don't have your best player, well, then that's going to change, who leads the team in home runs, WAR, all that stuff. And I'm almost surprised to see this. I'll have to double check the home run leader. I stuck with Trevor Story. All right. Okay. I guess I'm okay with that, I guess.
It's going to be tough now.
It's going to be tough now, although, one of the other predictions, and we won't talk about those exactly, but we did things about, will Gray get traded? We both said no. A few other guys. But I said at the beginning of the season, how I saw the tea leaves playing out, that, you know what? I would not be surprised if Trevor Story did not get traded. And I said no. We all know he should. We all know that he very well could. That look, you can beat a supplemental draft pick. You can beat the 45th overall pick. You know what I mean? In next year's draft for a qualifying offer and whatnot. But I just thought they wouldn't get it done. I think there's still definitely some truth to that. But Stories, he's going to have to stick around for the entirety of the season. This one definitely is most likely to go to you in Ryan McMahon, as he does lead the team right now with 16 home runs.
Yeah, and I was just double checking too on Baseball Reference WAR, which
slightly different.
Defense a little bit more. Ryan McMahon is second on the team, but first in position players at a 2.7. He's behind Marquez at 3.0 and ahead of Story at 2.0. Raimel Tapia there in fourth place at the 1.5, just ahead of CJ Cronin, his 1.4. Oddly enough, Garrett Hampson with positive 1.3. Got to imagine that vast majority of that is coming from his defense. Same thing with Joshua Fuentes is 1.2, but not a whole lot from there. But yeah, I feel confident about McMahon either way going forward in both the WAR and home run categories there. I think that's going to bear out for him. I don't know that we specified before the season. Maybe we gave ourselves that opportunity so that we can both I guess we both took McMahon, but still it's like, we'll take Baseball Reference if that says that we were right, and we'll take Fangraphs if that says we were right.
Yeah, didn't go in that deep, right? Because that's something that fans probably might not realize is that Baseball Reference and Fangraphs, they each have their own formula for valuing the win above a replacement level player, right? It's basically just a concept more than anything. And yet here we've got these quote unquote tried and true statistics, and yet it's a concept. You and I, if we were, spend enough time and dedicated to it, we could do something similar. It might not be as good. It might have more variations than Fangraphs and Baseball Reference, because on Fangraphs, Ryan McMahon is at 1.7. Baseball Reference is at 2.7. So like that's kind of a big chasm. And you know that if you're trying to swing a trade, you go, well, how do I value this guy, right?
Yeah.
And so each organization will have their own varied metric to try to figure out that actual value. So yeah, we can probably we'll spin it however we would like to, because it's a friendly wager between you and I. So
right. So that'll work out nicely. We do then toast our Breck Brews and Celsius on this day to everyone there who's doing good work for the Colorado Rockies. They're top WAR players. They're toasting those Breck Brews and Celsius down at the bar. You'll get a much bigger one if you're a subscriber, and you should subscribe, because not only do you get the big beer, well, you get access to all the written content. You constantly are getting discounts on hats and shirts. You get to hang out in our Discord channel where we're talking sports 24/7, also movies and TV and cooking and anything and everything under the sun, having a good time. Come be a part of the family. Subscribe to the DNVR.com. If you get the annual right now, we'll send a free shirt out your way from the DNVR Locker. All kinds of good stuff. Many, many fun reasons to become a member of the family today. Also, many, many fun reasons to become Manscaped. You know, use your imagination. But seriously, fellas, it is 2021. There's really no excuse, especially in these scorching hot summers, not to be Manscaped. It's going to be better for you. It's going to be better for anyone taking care of you in every way you can think of. You're going to feel better. You're going to smell better. You're going to be better if you're Manscaped. Get Manscaped, and you can also get a fantastic deal. But I would come back from I went back to the Thursday, and you get some fantastic deal there, kiddos, when you use promo code DNVR at manscaped.com. You'll get 20% off plus free shipping with DNVR. That's some fantastic deal at manscaped.com. Do like trim it up, fellas. Like spritz it down. Get it taken care of. If you want to be taken care of, you got to take care of yourself. You got to get Manscaped. Use the promo code.
Well, it's no surprise that everyone out there is enjoying their Manscaped lawnmowers 4.0 or 4.0s. Lawnmower 4.0s. Something along that. But there's also been a couple. Lawns mower could be Lawns mower
4.0.
There are other surprises with the Rockies. Some good, some bad, and we've got some takeaways on that. 3 surprises so far in the first half. Drew, you and I agree on 2 of them, and most folks that are watching probably have similar takeaways. Probably the biggest surprise of the season, only because we didn't know what the Rockies were getting. There was a hope, still unproven, still, figuring out. He'd been used as a reliever a bit last year after being a starter all throughout the minors, a high-level draft pick, but it just kind of hadn't entirely come to fruition. Talked about throwing a curveball on the moon and doing the same thing at Coors Field, which is closest thing we have to a moon ballpark, a moon-based stadium. Right. And that's Austin Gomber, a huge surprise, in the running for an all-star. And really, if he hadn't gone on the IL, he may have been able to challenge Germán Marquez. It was really Gomber going on the IL, then Marquez nearly throwing the no-hitter at home at Coors Field, that kind of pushed his stock up and above and beyond, along with the next couple starts after that. So Gomber's been a huge surprise, welcome surprise, one that even if the second half, goes slightly off the rails or maybe is disappointing in comparison, you saw the potential there. It's like Kyle Freeland's 2018 season. You go, wow, this is something. 2019 happens, you go, this is awful. But don't forget, not many guys can do what Kyle Freeland did in 2018, and not too many guys have had the success that Austin Gomber have had, even for a shorter period of time. They haven't had that success. So knowing that that's in there and capable of, and he's capable of doing that, considering that he still has, I think, 4 more years of control beyond this season. He's going to be around for a while. It's very promising to know that, okay, this guy, if he can keep it together for an entirety of a season, he could be the 5th Rockies pitcher to garner a vote in National League Cy Young Award voting.
Yeah. There was something So I'm basically 90% done with a piece that I've shelved for a little bit in anticipation of when Gomber comes back and it's more relevant. I want people to check this whole thing out. But I really do think, he's got the DNA for it. He has all the right things that you need to be successful here, and to have shown them right away was not what I was expecting at all. That's just not how it goes here. I can only think of 2 starting pitchers in the history of the Colorado Rockies. Now, this is my recollection of the Colorado Rockies, which while I was alive during the 90s and watching them, I was a child. So I'm going to think somewhere around 2000, 2001. I'm thinking back to what I remember, guys that showed up right away and just were good. One was Jason Jennings, and that didn't end up turning into a great career, but he still had a pretty nice career, did Jason Jennings. Solid career. And the other was Ubaldo Jimenez. It's the only other guy that showed up, and now that's different because he had dominant stuff, but just looked as comfortable and natural throwing the baseball at Coors Field and not getting rattled and pitching his game and not caring who was at the plate, and occasionally making really good hitters look positively silly, despite the fact that he's dealing with being a rookie. Essentially, he's not technically being a first-time starting pitcher who's his first full season of baseball and all the Coors Field stuff. And he just is out there pitching like he's in the backyard. And that, to me, is huge. So, yeah, I've been blown away by what we've seen from Gomber. Like you said, there wasn't much to sink our teeth into. We went and grabbed scouting reports and get on the Fangraphs and Baseball Reference pages. You're looking at what he did in the minors. And I like that he didn't walk people. That was like the first thing I went to. He doesn't walk guys. And we've seen that bear out here over the last couple of months where his strikeout to walk ratio has been obscene. But you just don't know until a guy gets out there and does it, especially at Coors Field. You just don't know. And for him to dominate there the way he has, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely helps Colorado with the way he came over too, going on and going forward. Daniel Murphy, they decided to not pick up his option, and then they acquired Austin Gomber, and you go, I don't know. That's what I'm referencing. All right, the other guy that we had as being a big surprise, and Drew Goodman talked about it last week on our podcast, is Jonathan Daza, a guy who seemed like he was a 4th outfielder at best, was a guy that was pretty much, a Brendan Rodgers injury away from not making the opening day roster and having, him lost to another team potentially, or going back down to AAA. And he's inserted himself as, the starting center fielder for now. We'll see if he's a starting center fielder of the future, or at least the next couple of years here. We will see. But it's surprising to think that Daza is the one, not only on the Rockies, but flourishing in Colorado, but that Sam Hilliard is the one that's trapped in AAA.
Yeah.
Stunning.
That's the double surprise there. Absolutely. Because I definitely would have leaned toward Hilliard, who has the more exciting potential raw skill set with all the power there. And, as we've talked about over and over again, you're just not going to get pop out of Jonathan Daza. It comes in those sinker low and in, and he turns on it, you might get one. That's it. But beyond that, and again, it's just, you're setting me up here. You're throwing these pitches. I'm going to go ahead and swing at it. Got a Daza piece that's been in the works for a little while as well, which is less he's the center fielder of the future and more, this is an experiment the Rockies have needed to do for a very long time and haven't been able to do. 1, because they haven't necessarily had the personnel, and 2, because the personnel oftentimes conflicted with the offense that they desperately needed in 17 and 18 when they were trying to compete, stuff like that. Go out and get Billy Hamilton. He'll roam center field, and that'd be great, but it can't get on base, right? And so this year in this experiment, let's see what happens year, they throw Daza out there eventually. He wasn't on my Lost Boys list. Like you said, he got, DFA'd. He was off the roster in the offseason. And to go out there and say, okay, now he's just making enough contact that his offense, they've actually had to kind of ride him and put him there in the second spot. We'll see how long that lasts. But the defense has been so good in center field that at least now you've got a little while, and it starts to make, why did they draft this Benny Montgomery? Why are they into these, alongside Zach Veen and these super speedy, lanky outfielders and stuff? Like, it didn't work out for Sam Hilliard, but if it can work out for Dawson, it's showing you what it can be. I think he's been a revelation defensively for them. And so, for 10 years, I've wanted them to have an elite defensive center fielder to see what kind of impact it can have on the run prevention game, how much help it can do for the pitchers. And of course, it happens in this year where it's not going to make a difference in the standings. But we're learning a lot about not just Daza. If he can do it, great, fun for a while. But at the very least, we're seeing the value of what a player like him. Then you get the better version, and then you're in business.
And now's the perfect time to experiment, right? Because you don't know if it definitively is going to work or not. And it seems to obviously there's obvious benefits to that. Like, to your point, like you're right. Like, let's get an elite defender out in center field and see how that changes the game. And so far, it's hard for the naked eye to pick up that change in the game. It's just that extra step that you get to a baseball that you wouldn't have previously, and you go, oh yeah, well, he hit it to the gap, right? And Daza's, getting to some of those baseballs. I think we've even seen it where he's lined up kind of in right center, the ball goes out to left center, he tracks it down. So it's something that's going to take time, but this is when you experiment. It's almost like the 6-man rotation that they worked on, where they were piggybacking, 6 starters where they each would split up a game. Okay, that didn't work, but that's when you want to do it. When you can kind of admit, like, all right, we got to figure out the next thing. We got to figure out how we can use Coors Field to our advantage. Let's make it a home field advantage. And, Rockies were able to kind of crack that code a little bit, and we think they've cracked it. I think they've cracked it. We could find out if this is just maybe a special class of pitchers that they've assembled. And maybe they don't have the recipe, but it does appear that they have the recipe of let's have them get the crap beat out of them a little bit down in the minors to see how mentally tough they are, because they are going to need that toughness, that mental fortitude to be successful at Coors Field. That does seem like the recipe that will work continuing going forward, and not just this special class of pitchers. So they figured that out. Now's the time to experiment and do other things like that. And you're absolutely right. Daza allows them that bit of experimentation to figure out, this is a way that we can do some more little things well, so that the big things like winning a ball game and not giving up, bases clearing double, allows us to take care of those bigger things and win some ball games.
And I do like Mark and Sean both pointing out here in the comments that Hilliard and Connor Joe are really hot in AAA right now. But I have, like said, people have been sending me, and I love that for Hilliard. I really hope his story is not over, because the tools are just exploding out of that guy, but you can't strike out 35% of the time. So it's been nice to see him lock in. If he can lock it in, everyone should be rooting for Sam Hilliard. So
no doubt. And another guy I think folks are rooting for, I've got one more positive surprise. You've got one maybe a little less so. So my third surprise of the first half, and it's been a little bit shorter, it's Brendan Rodgers. Now, it seems as if he's figured it out, right? He's a big league player now. We'll see if he's really ascending to that next level. For the past month, he's been one of the better players in all of MLB. Not best, but one of the better players. He's, especially if you look at second baseman in all of baseball since June 5th, he's been towards the top of that list. Speaking with Bo Bichette about him, that he's finally coming into his own. He's finally healthy. He's finally has enough pieces, to put together. And as much as Ryan McMahon appears to be the next guy up to be the star or the face of the team, and I think that'll still be the case, Brendan Rodgers has now, finally entered that fray. He's got a long way to go until people are talking about him the way people have been talking about Ryan McMahon really for the past 2 years. He's got a way to go for that, but I think he's entered that. And, he was hurt. So, what are you going to do? Just comes back towards the third week of May, and, he's scraping along for a couple weeks. He's healthy. He's back. He's feeling good, and he's performing very well. And so I think he's he kind of rounds out the first half positive surprises. A couple other guys like, hey, they have been good, maybe a little bit better than expected, but not as we love to say, move the needle enough. But Brendan Rodgers, he's moved that needle.
Yeah, I like that take for sure. I considered Brendan Rodgers for this. I backed out because I've been
because you hate him. Just say it. You hate him. No.
Because I actually for obviously the exact opposite reason, right? Because it's not that much of a surprise to me. I've been expecting
True.
Brendan Rodgers to show up and be good, and
it wasn't a first half; it was a month.
Right,
not as long.
But I do think there's a lot more in there. I think we're going to see a potentially pretty great second half out of him, and I do think that by the end of the season, it's going to be very easy to classify Brendan Rodgers as, at least from the consensus standpoint, as a big positive surprise for the Rockies, because I think I don't know if I can say most people. I don't know how we're defining most. I do think it was the consensus around Rockies media and fandom that Brendan Rodgers just wasn't going to work out. And so it looks like, he's going to surprise that particular expectation.
Yeah, I don't know if people didn't think it was going to work out. I think it was more of the context of, hey, that third overall pick did not work out. And we know, like, you can't keep those those labels on. People had said that about John Gray for the half of his tenure with the Rockies. And you go, look, you get a pick. It's a lottery ticket to many degrees. You look at this last year's draft. Henry Davis goes 1 overall, not because he's the best. That's the strange thing about baseball. Unlike all the other drafts, it's not who's best. It's who works out for the money, who's a good fit in your organization, looking ahead 3, 4, or 5 years down the road, et cetera, et cetera. So, people were ready. I'll say this: people definitely were ready to totally brush Brendan Rodgers aside. You're right. There were less people on the Rodgers bandwagon than that were on the no, he's got it. So
part of that is me picking on former Denver Bronco Ryan Harris and Josh Dover on Altitude every time I would go on there and I would start talking about the Lost Boys and I'd rattle off a list of names. I'd throw Brendan Rodgers in there. They go, Drew, stop it, Rod, stop it. So maybe that was maybe weighing on me a little heavier than the rest of it. I'll pick on those guys particularly. Love that show, by the way.
Call them out by name. That's how you do it. And you've got to call somebody else out by name, don't you, here? As a not so big first half surprise, huh?
Yeah.
Surprise for the wrong reasons.
So, and I'm calling out myself here. And again, this is about surprise of your own expectations, right? I had very high expectations for Antonio Senzatella coming into this season. As you saw in the graphic earlier, I took him to be the Rockies' best pitcher. I actually thought he had a chance to kind of surprise and take advantage of not being the top guy. And his stuff was so good last year. And he was so locked in. And it was an obvious natural evolution for him. And I just didn't see this step back coming. All that said, Senz has been fine.
Yeah.
A 4.58 ERA. He's right at exactly a 100 ERA plus. So, he's been right about league average, and then he's been able to pick up some innings, so that helps with the WAR and all those things. I do see he's given up more hits than anybody else in the National League right now. So and that again, it's just like the strikeout stuff. I wasn't expecting him to become a dominant strikeout pitcher, but he'd always been kind of like a 5 to 6 strikeouts per game guy who really had to work the fastball, get the ground balls. And I thought we were in for a permanent bump up to around 8, never going to be a double digit. It's not going to be those kinds of guys, but that he could really get some solid strikeouts and dominate some games. I was looking for, a 120 to 130 ERA plus type of season out of him. And it hasn't been there. He's been, for what his job is, the fourth man in the rotation. Fine, perfectly acceptable. But I'm not quite sure what it is there too, because the curveball, the breaking stuff remains improved. The fastball actually has gotten better. His fastball is like sitting now on 98, which is like, what in the world is going on? So I don't know if there's a decision making, if he's not choosing the right pitch, if it's a game plan thing. just a little bit. There was so much more in there, and instead he's kind of reverted back to being the league average pitcher he's been for most of his career.
He's been a little unlucky. One statistic that I love looking at, and especially if you play fantasy sports, when it comes to pitchers, looking at expected fielding independent pitching. So there's actually a correlation with your earned run average, and just looking at the 3 true outcomes, looking at how many, the things that the pitchers essentially can control. They can control walking a guy, they can control striking out a guy, right? If they've got really good stuff, and they can control just leaving a baseball right over the heart of the plate or throwing in a guy's happy zone and giving up a home run. Just looking at those 3 things, there's a formula that you can figure out, like, hey, did the outcomes actually match what this player did? And so far this season, Senzatel's been a little unlucky. His expected FIP, field independent pitching, is 4.17, whereas last year he had a 3.44 ERA, but his expected fielding independent pitching was 4.81. So he almost was a little bit lucky last season, even though he looked brilliant. Again, that start against Zach Greinke was fantastic, but you saw all the elements of a guy who was ready to take the next step. And a lot of his numbers, his strikeouts per 9 are up. It's up 1 whole extra strikeout. His walks per 9 is actually down 1/4 of a walk per 9. He's given up less home runs than last season. So those are indicators to say he's actually been a little bit better. But you're right, the results haven't been there and haven't correlated. And he's still been, according to Fangraphs, the second best starting pitcher on the Rockies. But from what you saw last season, there's indicators to go, this is another one of those lost boys, another one of those younger guys ready to take a next step. And like you said, you were expecting more, and because we haven't gotten it from him, and I did expect more too. I did think that was coming again this year. You go, that's a surprise for a wrong reason. Not awful, not detrimental, just you know what? Would have loved to have seen you and a little bit more of him and Marquez doing the things together rather than Marquez being the one who just totally takes off.
And I'm going to try to find this because, to my eye test and that.
We got you back, Drew. Go ahead.
Okay. I think
to the eye test.
Savant, I believe Baseball Savant just froze the crap out of my computer is what happened there, because I was looking up. I was able to get the information and come right back, though, to confirm my eye test that Senza is giving up more hard contact. So it's, you're right. Fielding independent pitching, very, very important, but that's one of the things that can lean it in either direction. Why is he giving up more hits? Is it just because his defense hasn't been good behind him? That seems unlikely unless he's had more Crone games than Fuentes games, stuff like that. Maybe more games earlier in the season. Could be the defense. But otherwise, Rockies' defense has been very, very good, so it seems unlikely. Maybe ball's just in the wrong place. Unlucky. But also the hard contact is part of why he's given up 111 hits. He's 20th percentile in terms of average exit velocity, and Max, I think, was close to that. Again, Baseball Savant just froze my computer, but I was just because I was like, I feel like he's left a few more pitches over the middle of the zone, and when you're throwing harder, which he is, those balls are going to leave the bat harder as well. So, we can get into this when we get to the next part. I was going to say,
35% hard hit rate last year, 39% this year. So you're right. That's it's when you give it up. It's like leaving runners stranded. It's a skill to a degree, and Senzatel hasn't benefited from that. So those are our surprises. Let's kind of go the other way and say who's going to turn around, who's going to maybe be our second half surprises. And I don't think for the most part we got different guys on our list.
Good.
Number one for me, and this one might not be this one's cheating like you did with surprises to a degree. You said is Kyle Freeland. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. We've seen him be better in his last few starts since coming back from the IL and almost making rehab starts at the big league level. We know he did it in Albuquerque officially, but then he comes up and you go, hey, what's the better option? Kyle Freeland at 85, 90%, still feeling out some things, still working on some things and not entirely back to where he can compete to the best of his abilities, or our number 7 starter, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Chichi's the number 6 guy. They're currently using him in the rotation. So, yeah, let's go with Freeland. So he's looked a lot better. I think he's going to have a much better second half. He's going to turn it around, continue to build on success, similar to some other guys who have gone into the break doing really well. A lot of players actually in the month of July, this entire month when the temperature is heated up, the Rockies have improved. And I think Freeland's going to lead that group.
Yeah, I like that. I agree with you. I think he's in for a big half. My first pick is actually very similar in that vein where I'm cheating twice actually with this one because first I'm taking 2 players because I'm going to say the Rockies catching tandem. And it's also a little bit
better. I like that better because with Diaz, we know you're cheating.
Because Diaz, right?
Like I'm cheating with Freeland. He's sneaking in Dom Nunez, cheeky. Yeah. I love it. Tell me why the second half, the catchers are going to be one of the bigger turnaround stories for the Rockies.
Yeah. So even including what Diaz has done lately, I think the exhaustion of everything just got to Dom Nunez, not having a minor league season last year, being a rookie, being thrown into the starting role all of a sudden when you were expecting to catch once every 4 days. All of a sudden now you're catching every day but one a week. And, he got off to such a hot start. I think that rose his expectations of himself and what everyone was thinking he could do. And as this guy really arrived, and it just didn't, it happens that way. He ended up having a pretty tough first half. I think the talent is there. I think, again, like you get to reset, you get to take some of the pressure off yourself now that Diaz has been doing so well, and you can go out and just kind of play your game a little bit. And there's all the things I've always been talking about, getting experience at the big league level, learning about the hangover effect, getting more used to that. And when you can step away for a few days during an all-star break and kind of reset in your brain, okay, what have I learned? What have I done? What can I do? I think those are some of the guys who get the most benefit of that, are the young, growing players. And I think both Diaz and Nunez have shown a ton of signs that they're getting there, but not there yet. And so I expect this Diaz thing to stick a little bit, and for him to have a very, very solid second half, and for Nunez to come around and really prove to be a very capable hitter at the big league level, where at times he's looked just totally lost. So, yeah. Oh, you're muted. All right.
I've got we might as well continue to just cheat here. Why not? Let's continue to cheat. I got 2 guys. I got 2 veterans that I think I kind of have tied for the final spot in turnarounds. Charlie Blackmon and Chris Owings. Now, I don't necessarily think they're going to have huge second halves. I just think they're going to be a little bit more consistent.
Charlie's
for Owens,
I should have thought of that. Yeah, Charlie. Yeah.
For Owens, it's going to be just being healthy, right? It's going to be consistent. He's a guy that, again, in the piece that just went up this morning on the DNVR.com, he's a trade candidate, but the organization loves him. They should love him, right? He's doing the super utility thing, much like Garrett Hampson. Yes, you can have 2 super utility players. You can have 3 even, right? And when Jonathan Daza gets hurt, okay, Hampson's your center fielder, period.
Yeah.
Right? Period. That's fine. That's why having a few of those guys that can play all around are so valuable. So I think they'd love to have him back next year. They can trade him and still sign him again in free agency. Like, that's not crazy. But they could also just say, you know what? Maybe let's not chance that, and let's keep him around for the remainder of the season. I also don't think you're going to get back a lot anyway. So
wherever he is, though, I think I like that. I like that pick for Owings. Yeah.
And for Blackmon, just a tick better. We started off the season slowly, heated up, kind of leveled off, just a little bit. And I think he's going to, bring a little more stability to the lineup. I think Rodgers kind of reemerging. Maybe once the story business gets settled, that, we'll see a more of a taste of Chuck of old. Maybe not the superstar Charlie of old, but the veteran that is just consistent and just really, just tabulates those numbers in the middle of the lineup. There's no pressure on him, where, again, in the first half of the season, I think there is a certain amount of pressure regardless, maybe to prove people wrong, in other years to try to, make a postseason push or to say, hey, look, we really are contenders. This second half of the season, we know that the Rockies are not going up. And so I think that's just going to take a lot of pressure off. So I think both those two guys, Blackmon and Owings, a little bit more stable, and they'll turn it around to the point where you look back on their season and go, yeah, they had really good to above average seasons for those guys.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I also wonder if Charlie, after a down year with the stick a little bit, especially if the next CBA does have universal DH in it, will evolve on that position and say, maybe with all these young guns running around with Daza and Hampson, and if Hilliard's going to figure it out a little bit, Tapia doing his thing, maybe another outfielder, if Brenton Doyle's there along the coming up here before too long, and Blackmon goes, maybe that DH thing actually isn't such a bad idea. I'd be very curious to see that, because he ain't done, folks. Like, there's more in that bat. And I think you're right. There's some old man Charlie Blackmon moments in front of us, is what I'm trying to say. The tough, gritty old man who can't run like he used to and can't play in the field anymore, but can still come up with those big moments with the bat. So
we know while he may not be an all-star caliber guy here now, going for the next 2 more seasons beyond this, he's going to provide those feel-good moments. And again, we'll see what happens this offseason at the trade deadline. There's nobody really that's going to change the outlook of the organization to the point that people coming to Coors Field aren't going to be saying, I'm here to watch Charlie Blackmon.
I see some Charlie
A
Blackmon.
Majority of people are still saying, no one's going to take – he's got the top spot, right? Story right now, Story and Blackmon, right? Yeah. But we know ultimately it's just going to be Blackmon for the next year for the most part. And so even if Mcmahon has a huge second half, people still know Blackmon just because he's been around for a decade at this point.
Yeah.
And even if they make an off-season signing, go, I don't know who this guy is, but I am here to see Charlie Blackmon. And you're right, they're going to be a lot more old man Charlie moments for the Rockies in our future.
All right, I've got one more big cheaty turnaround for you because I couldn't bring myself to pick any specific individual out of the bullpen. I am going to take the Rockies bullpen in general. And we could even just put a pin in this on this date on the 16th and do the ERA to this point and ERA from hereafter. And that's basically what I'm looking for, is the bullpen ERA to be slightly less disastrous than it was in the first half. Now, this is an interesting choice because they're probably going to lose a couple of these guys. They should trade the guy who's been far and away their best reliever. That's Michael Givens. And I think that should happen. And I think that it probably will. That said, it's much more about the collective for me here. As we've seen, Givens hasn't exactly been able to make the entire unit into a successful one, right? Even if you guys, whether Bardo's on the team or not, I think actually he's going to be better in the second half. He'll settle in a little bit. But I do think that, I'm looking more toward guys like Robert Stevenson, Jordan Sheffield, if Carlos Estevez is still around, better second halves and improvement out of guys like Justin Lawrence and Lucas Gilbreth. I think all of those players collectively are going to be less bad. Jacob, how about you? King behind the screen. Appreciate your super chat.
Yeah, one of the interesting aspects with the bullpen is I think they have the second least amount of innings pitched. Out of, or third, so most or least amount of innings pitched of an NL team, and 27th in all of baseball. So under 300 innings, it's the third worst in baseball. Only the Diamondbacks in the NL have been that much worse. So you're right, they've got nowhere to go but up. Stevenson being healthy, even if Givens is around for 2 more weeks before getting traded, hey, that's still 2 more weeks.
I get to count those. Yeah,
that does count. That absolutely counts. So yeah, we'll have to go back. and look how the second half is, because it really seems like it can be worse. Again, Rockies fans know that it can be worse.
It was worse last year.
And I said, at the beginning of the season,
yeah,
I was like, what's going to be the surprise of the team, or what's going to be the best part of the team? Everyone said starting pitching, obviously. I really thought that the relief pitching was going to be sneaky good, or at least had the potential for it. We know it had the potential. I straight up said it was going to be pretty good. I thought it was going to be better than the offense, and it absolutely has not, right? There's those arms there, and I don't get any points if in 2 years from now you go and look and there's like 6, 7, 8 guys from this bullpen that are having really solid seasons and go on to have really good careers. I don't get credit for that, because I thought it was going to happen this year. There was that potential, and unfortunately it hasn't happened. So I like that for a second half turnaround.
Right on. All right, do we have another one? We have last one? Or is that the end one? Oh yeah, okay. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're friend. But you like cans, Patrick? You be you big can guy? Jars?
Oh, can guy. All right. When you say cans, it's different than
I know.
Can.
I set you up there. It's like, didn't we do the
for consuming beverages? Love them. It's one of the only ways I consume said beverages.
And of course, big recycler.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
I always recycle.
And that's just like our friends at Ball, man. They're making the cans, they're recycling the cans, and you can help them make the cans and recycle the cans. You've probably heard of Ball before, and even if you hadn't, you've used their products before. If you've got anything out of an aluminum can or a jar or a lot of glassware, they do some fantastic work. They take care of the environment. They take care of their workers. They make sustainable products. They treat everybody well. They pay everybody well. Apparently, AJ also has a connection with people that work at Ball. So we've got all these like personal references to be able to tell people, like, seriously, everyone we know who's worked there or been into the factories or checked any of it out knows what they're doing down at Ball Corporation. There's a reason they got the naming rights for Ball Arena out there where the Nuggets and Avalanche play, and everyone was super stoked on it because they're an extraordinary member of the Colorado community, but also of the global community. And you have the opportunity, if you're looking for a little bit of work, to go right here in Golden, just down the road from us. Here, go check out #WorkAtBall online or apply at their aluminum can plant by texting Golden to 77222. Go to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. That's jobs.ball.com. Search for Golden, or simply text Golden to 77222 so you can get your can fix. You can be a part of the process, helping people everywhere get cans they need for nice, tasty beverages, but also take care of the environment so that we can do it again in the future. Sustainability here.
One of the reasons why I loved your bullpen pick to be a bounce back for the second half is because I did select Yency Almonte to be one of the turnarounds, which isn't a stretch since he does have he does have an ERA north of 10. So, and I don't mean I-10. I'm not sure that even goes through Colorado, but it's a road. He has to bounce back. 2 outings since getting slapped around by the Cardinals a week plus ago, and that 6-run outing where 5 earned runs he gave up. I think he's going to get those opportunities, right? Like you look at some of the young guys where Ben Bowden and Lucas Gilbreth, for example, 2 of the only lefties, they're going to get shuttled up and down. They're kind of the last guy in the bullpen, right? There's not too many options. But when it comes to Almonte, he doesn't have those options. And he does have that upside and that potential to maybe, if he can figure it out, be a future closer for this organization. I think, he's got a much further way to go, and that's probably not fair to slap that tag on him. Same thing as you do with a Justin Lawrence type of saying, future closer. And if they somehow don't, reach that that pinnacle that they're somehow a failure. Obviously, that's not fair. But I just think he's going to have to. He's going to figure some things out. He's going to get the opportunity to figure those things out. His kind of breakdown and blow up, as I said, against the Cardinals, kind of comes at a good time where he got this reset. He got a big reset. And with the Dodgers series coming up this weekend, and then against the Mariners before going back on the road, allows him to be in the comfortable, maybe not friendly, but the comfortable confines of Coors, where he's used to pitching. And I just think he's going to be that one guy you can point to and have a notably better second half. I think Stevenson is a guy you pointed out. I think he'll be better. He has to be as well in many ways, but I think Almonte's a guy that, if his fortunes happen to change a little bit in the second half, then all of the bullpen will be that much better for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. And we talked about how difficult it is to make those mechanical adjustments mid-season. A little break there is one of the things that allows you to get in some mechanical and bullpen work when you normally wouldn't. So I like that.
All right. Well, you got all your guys in? You got all your turnarounds?
The only last one, and I don't need to spend time on it because we talked about it before, was Senzatella. Give Bird by fire, whatever. I'm not out. I'm not giving judges because I was disappointed in his first half. Big things in the second half out of Antonio Senzatella.
All right. Final segment. Let's wrap it up with looking at final 5 minutes, wrapping up the division winners. Now, in the National League, you, me, Makayla, we're pretty much similar across the board, right? Yeah. We had Atlanta, who's not out yet. They did acquire Jock Peterson. They're not tapping out just because Ronald Acuna, their best player is on the IL. They've got some other guys banged up. Ian Anderson, my Rookie of the Year pick, just went on the IL. Oof. That's been disappointing. We all had St. Louis in the Central. I get no credit for mentioning the Brewers.
You said
wanting to.
But,
no guts, no glory. Nope. We all picked the Dodgers, or you and I picked the Dodgers. Makayla picked San Diego. But we all picked the Dodgers and San Diego to make the postseason in some capacity. As far as our final wild card pick, I went Mets. Makayla went Mets. You went Nationals. So Mets are winning the East as of right now, but the Nationals are still in it. There was some talk that maybe, hey, Scherzer's going to be on the market, but I think the Nationals may be buyers. They're talking with the Nationals. They're talking with the Cubs right now about potentially acquiring Chris Bryant. They just simply don't want to give up some of their top prospects that include Mr. Cade Cavalli from the University of Oakland. They drafted him last year. He was down at the Futures game. So the NL's kind of up for grabs there. We're all pretty much in the same boat as far as feeling good about our selections in the NL.
Yeah. Obviously, San Francisco, none of us had that.
No one in the world had that. That's
right. And as far as the rest of them, can't feel too bad about that. Even, and I think you're right. Milwaukee's probably got the Central, but I'm still not counting St. Louis out. There's no
pick on here for the NL that you go, what was happening there?
Right. We'll have one of those for the AL. I've got you covered for that.
At least one of those.
I've got you full on covered in the American League for what the hell were you on?
Here's the AL division winners and wild card. Let's see if you can figure those out. We all had the Yankees. We'll see what they do. When you're a national team like the Yankees, you are going to be under fire. And they've had some bad losses. Go back and look at the reaction of John Boy and Jake from Sunday's post-game show. Down, up 7-2 in the ninth. Altuve walks it off, strips it off, having his jersey pulled from his body. And yet they're over 500. Like, they're not Rockies fans wish that they had the Yankees team and their record and, perspective. So they're not entirely out of it. I don't know that they're going to win the East. Boston, another team, almost kind of very much more overlooked. Has the East right now. In the Central, you and Makayla had Minnesota, which was the chalk. They're bad. But
they're bad.
For me, it was a little neck and neck. I mean, I'd also have Cleveland as a wild card team, so I did like Minnesota third. I was a little bit worried about Josh Donaldson and Nelson Cruz, some of their older guys on the team. Cruz still did it. He made the All-Star team, so he's still providing that value. But the White Sox just look too good and they're leading the Central as of right now. AL West, Houston, Oakland, they're neck and neck. That's been a real exciting battle throughout the season.
Yeah.
Exchanging spots. Oakland is definitely not out of it, but feel good about the Houston pick because that was a team that I think a lot of people didn't necessarily expect to go back and do it with a lot of their veteran guys, moving on and going different places, and a lot of names that, weren't household names, but, were some of these younger, inexperienced players and prospects that they had, cobbled together during their tanking period, essentially, and they're still providing value. So I think we did a good job in the AL West. That's still up for grabs. And then the wild card, Cleveland is slowly fading. They're still at about 500, but there's a lot of talk about them dealing away some of their players. They've had a lot more injury issues than they would have liked. Tampa Bay, obviously still in the mix. They've got one of the wild cards right now.
Yeah, good on you for staying on Tampa Bay.
And then the Texas Rangers. Drew, you have the floor.
If I had taken the Boston Red Sox, people on that day, people would have thought I was crazier than if I had taken the Texas Rangers. And that was the entire – now, go back and listen.
I don't know about that, but –
go back and
you're
listen.
Right. You would have gotten crap for the Red
logic
Sox.
For taking Texas, which was there's going to be a team that comes out of nowhere that shouldn't be there who's there. And I just grabbed –
You closed your eyes, you pointed and said, hey, that's a team no one sees.
I may as well have thrown a dart at the board. I didn't have any particular great reason for it. It just seemed like a team that's been completely not talked about was going to be there. But that was
where the Cleveland came from, right? That was where the thinking of Milwaukee. And in fact, there was I saw a graphic recently that if you look at the division winners from last season, which was 60 games, but still, the division winners this year, all different.
Yeah.
All different. So no one, as of right now, no one is even going back to repeating. And again, that's the beauty of baseball. That's why all of these little moves. I mean, shoot, even just looking up and down the Rockies roster, how many non-roster invites ended up making the team? And yes, say what you will about, what that means in the larger picture, but still, you just don't know. That's one of the beautiful things with baseball is you can always be surprised. You go to the ballpark, you never know what's going to happen. Yada yada yada. Baseball. We love it. It's the best.
But that one is obviously the dumbest pick of any of these. Clearly, that Texas pick was the dumbest one.
Look, if you had gone with the Yomiuri Giants, that would have been worse. So I'm trying to make you feel better because they're not in the league. They play in a different country. That would have been worse. So you know what? You didn't do that bad. How about
I'd have picked those Giants before. I'd have picked the San Francisco Giants to win the NL West. We spent like 12 podcasts arguing with each other over the Dodgers and the Padres, and the Padres and the Dodgers, and the Dodgers and the Padres. The Giants were like,
yeah. Meanwhile, the Giants just walk right by. They created a scene, right? Like, hey, what's going on over there? That's the diamond heist. Is everyone's over here focused on this thing, and here the Giants are in.
Why? Because they made a big acquisition. Because they did a bunch of smart front office stuff. No, because Buster Posey and Brandon Crawford are good again.
And Kevin Gossman is great. And Kevin Gossman bet on himself and said, "Yeah, I am going to stay here in San Francisco. I'm comfortable." And he's gearing up for a big second half. He gets to start today and actually opted to not pitch. Again, that was another piece that recently came out, and speaking with him over the All-Star break. Chris Bassett started on Sunday, pitched in the All-Star game. Kevin Gossman started on Sunday and said, no, I'm trying to go out there and win the NL West and maybe even a Cy Young Award. And wouldn't that be a story? Colorado kid possibly winning the Cy Young Award. He's got a sub-2 ERA, Drew. Keep your eye on Kevin Gossman. Cy Young Award. We'll see.
If Jacob deGrom gets hurt, it's possible.
He's been known to do that.
And fair enough. You know what? Fair enough.
He's in the running. I'm not. Obviously, I would.
It can't just be a one-man race.
Yeah, DraftKings Sportsbook. I'll go ahead and for every dollar I bet, I win, half of a cent.
Yeah.
I'm still going to take Jacob deGrom, right? But you know what? Hey, if you want to feel a good story and maybe longer and better odds,
so cool.
Kevin Gossman.
I love it.
Grandview High School, Aurora, Colorado.
Love it. You can read all about it on the DNVR.com. Patrick has been writing banger after banger this week. You got to get on there, check out all the written content covering All-Star Week, all that stuff. Those things I was mentioning coming up here about Austin Gomber and Jonathan Dawson. I'm not done with All-Star Week either, and really the aftermath and ramifications and the deeper meaning behind what this week has meant to baseball in this community. And so subscribe to the DNVR.com so you can check out all that stuff, so you can be one of the more active members of this baseball community. Saw a couple of, I think our guy Sean, who was up here in the comments earlier, found his way into the Discord finally for the first time today. We're super excited to have your voice as a part of it, man. Everybody in there in the Discord making things happen. There's going to be a lot going on. We're going to be trading a bunch of fantasy deals back and forth with each other for the, what do you guys think of this? What do you think of this one? How about this one? It's going to be great fun in the Discord channel. Come hang out with us in there, and you'll again get that free shirt when you sign up for the annual. Follow everyone on social media at Drew Creasman, at Patrick Lyons, at DNVR_Rockies. Do subscribe on the YouTube. Click the bell icon so you know when we're going live, all that stuff, so you can get involved here with the chat live. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening into this episode. We hope that you will continue to be absolutely awesome out there. We promise that we will continue to be absolutely Patrick Lyons and Drew Creasman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.